Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be taking a look at tuning your guitar in. We're going to take a look at the two main ways you can do it. There are others, but the two ways that I like. The first way is with a tuner, and we'll do that first. And the second way is you can do it without a tuner, called the 5th fret technique. So let's take a look at using a tuner first. Now before we start using our tuner and learning how to tune our guitar in, we need to know the names of the open 6 strings on the guitar. Now I'm going to run through them here, but if you've reached the end of Guitarist with Book 1, or you're fairly through the Guitar Basics books, we should already know the names of these. But for now I'll just run through them really quickly. So we've got the E string at the top, the thickest one, then the A string, D string, G string, B and E. E, A, D, G, B, E. Now we're going to go to a close-up and I'm going to show you a little bit of the tuner. So this is my tuner here. At the moment it's trying to detect what's going on. But if I play a string, what you can see is that it says the letter name of the string that it thinks it is, which in this case is an E, and how closely that E is in tune. Now you can see this guitar is relatively in tune. It's got a little bit too flat there, but you can see that because the green light is right in the middle. Now if I was to detune it by accident, and I've made this note flat this time, too flat, you can see that it's going to the left over here. If that note was too sharp, it would go to the right. Okay, so our aim is to try and get that note right in the middle. Awesome. Now in this particular tuner, it's got 2 horizontal lines that tell you whether it is right in the middle or not. But in some tuners, it doesn't have that. Now, if your note is too flat, so it's very, very flat, or it's very, very sharp, it'll actually go to a different letter. So I'm going to detune this E again. And if it's too low, you can see now it's telling me it thinks this note is a D, and that little dot means a sharp, a D sharp. Obviously, we don't want that. So using your knowledge of the musical alphabet, or the general alphabet, we're going to go from D to E. You have to try and get it so at least it tells you the correct letter in here. Now it will only do that on what's called a chromatic tuner, or a chromatic setting on your tuner. This tuner only does chromatic settings, so it goes through every note possible in Western music. Some tuners, however, let you choose a specific setting. Now I don't have access to one here, but for example, you can choose the guitar setting and it'll only listen for the notes E, A, D, G, B, E. So for example, if you play the E string and it's telling you a different note, it's going to be wildly out of tune. All right, it's going to be quite out. So you have to make sure that it says the letter that it is in the corner. Okay, let's check the next string, the A. D, G. So the G now is a bit too sharp, so I need to loosen it ever so slightly. I'm going to get into how to loosen and tighten your strings in a second. The B is a little bit too sharp or too high. My B string's a little bit of a nightmare. There we are. Great. Okay, now I'm going to turn the camera around a little bit to the back of the guitar, and I'm going to show you how to actually, what direction to tune your guitars in. So here we are at the back of the headstock. This is kind of how you would look at it from your viewpoint. On most guitars like this, the E string is always going to be this one at the top, then the A string, then the D string, and then we go underneath for the G string, the B string, and the E string. Now it's not always like that, but most of the time it is if you've got 3 tuning pegs per side. If you have 6 tuning pegs per side, it's usually just E, A, D, G, B, E, okay, in order, most of the time. So if you wanted to sharpen a note or make a note higher, we always turn the tuning pegs anti-clockwise, okay, or away from you. So like this. If I wanted to make the E string, the thickest string on the guitar, a little bit higher, I'd take the tuning peg and I'd turn it anti-clockwise. Not too much, maybe like a half turn or something like that, and it's sharper. If I want to loosen a string, I'm going to do the other way, clockwise. Usually, when you're sharpening a string, you can feel it's a little bit harder to turn one way than it is the other way. So when you're turning it anti-clockwise, you can feel it's a little bit harder to turn, whereas flattening it, it's a little bit easier to turn. Okay, so in this section of the video, I want to take a look at the best practices for tuning a guitar. Now, believe it or not, tuning a guitar does take a little bit of practice to do, okay? And I'm going to show you the tips that will make it a bit easier. So, let's turn our tuner on. Now, most tuners, when you first turn them on, are going to be listening for some kind of input or a vibration. In this case, this tuner is listening for the vibration of the guitar. You might have one that you plug in, or you might have one with a microphone on. So what you kind of need to do is, you need to press or play the string, and then turn. And as the string starts to die out, you just play it again. What I do see some of my students do is they play the string, stop the string, and then turn it. That's not going to work, because as soon as you play and stop it, the tuner doesn't have any input anymore. So it's not listening for your string. Let's try it with a different string. Let's try it with the A string. So say, for example, if it was too flat, I'll turn it clockwise to make it flat. You give it a really big ring, and then start to turn until it gets in the middle. Now that we've looked at using a tuner to tune in our guitar, we're going to take a look at a technique called the 5th fret technique. Now this relies on your ears a little bit more to help you, and it's basically we're comparing notes together. All right. Before we begin this though, you do need to make sure that your thin E string is in tune first. Once that's done, let's start. Now that your E string is in tune, we're going to try and tune the B string in with the E string. I'm going to show you how to do it. So what we're going to do, we're going to fret down the 5th fret on the B string. You do have to make sure with your left hand that you're quite arched. You can't be very flat with your E string, all right? Be really arched so you're not fretting your E string. I like to do it with the middle finger, but you can do it with any. So what we're going to do is we're going to play the 5th fret on the B string, and we're going to play the open E string. And what we're trying to achieve is we're trying to get the exact same note. Now, because this guitar is already tuned in, they sound pretty similar. So I'm going to purposely detune the B string. We're going to make it a bit flat. My B string's a little bit off. So now if I play the 5th fret on the B string, it won't sound the same as the open E. So our aim is to try and get those to sound exactly the same. Now I find it a little bit harder this. You could actually leave the notes ringing on, but then you have to do a real big reach around with the other hand, and it's pretty hard to do. So you kind of have to stop the notes halfway through. I still think that could be a little bit higher. Perfect. Great, so now our B and E strings are in tune together. Let's do the G string. Now the G string is the only one that we have to play the 4th fret with rather than the 5th fret. Okay, so make sure you're on that 4th fret. So now we are comparing whether the 4th fret on the G string sounds the same as an open B string, because we know our B string now is in tune. So let's see if it sounds the same. That sounds pretty good. This time, I'm just going to sharpen it. I'm going to make the G 2 sharp. So 4th fret again on the G string. That's not sounding quite right. The G string is a lot higher than the B string is, okay? What we don't want to do, we don't want to play around with the B string. It's always, you have to mess around with the string that you're actually fretting down. Any open strings that we do in this exercise, don't play around with, because then you have to do it all again. So we play the G string. Sounds a lot higher than the B. So let's flatten it like we did before. Turning it clockwise. I think it sounds a little bit too high, just a little bit more. They sound good. Okay, so now we've got our 3 thin strings in tune, the G, B and A. Let's move on, let's do the bass strings, or the thickest strings on the guitar. So on the D string, we're going to go back to fret number 5. And now we're comparing the 5th fret on the D string to the open G string, and see whether they sound the same. They sound similar. Once the D string's in tune, so if it's too high or too low, you know what to do. Anti-clockwise for tightening, clockwise for flattening. On the A string, 5th fret again, and now we're comparing the 5th fret on the A string to the open D string. They sound relatively the same to me. And finally, to tune in the thickest string, we're going to compare the 5th fret to the open A. Now this is a great way to tune your guitar in a pinch, and it really develops your listening skills and your hearing skills to be able to discern a very, very similar sounding note, whether one note is higher or lower than the other. It's a really, really important skill. And like using a tuner to tune in, this does require a bit of practice. So keep having a go with it. And if you play a chord, for example, and you hear something that's not sounding quite right, go back again and try it out. You want to compare E, B. Thanks very much for watching this video. I hope you found it useful, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.